Over the Garden Wall is a mini-series from Cartoon Network and premiered in November of 2014. It took me about a year to finally get around to it, but after I did, I was hooked. It is easily one of my favorite animated series, and I can never get enough of it. It blows away all of my expectations, with its beautiful animation, the well-casted voice acting, its mesmerizing music, and above all else, an excellent story that immediately grabs my attention. Over the Garden Wall is also a wonderful show to watch during the fall, since that's the season that the show takes place in. We see the changing leaves. We see seasonal colors with shades of red, yellow, orange, and brown. We see how the nights grow longer, and how the setting changes throughout the series. Most seasonal shows fall into the Christmas category, so it was nice to see autumn get some love. By proxy, this also includes Thanksgiving and Halloween. Over the Garden Wall is truly amazing, and I'm gonna tell you why you should watch this show. Our story begins with a guy named Pat McHale. He's the creator of Over the Garden Wall and thought up of the concept of the series back in 2004. 2 years later, he pitched the idea to Cartoon Network, though it would be some time before the final product officially aired. In the meanwhile, Pat worked on some other shows on the network, one of those being The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack. It was a great place for him to hone his skills as a writer and storyboard artist. Also, it was an excellent place to network, as he worked alongside future showrunners, such as Alex Hirsch, J.G. Quintel, and Pendleton Ward. Pat would actually go on to work alongside Pendleton with Adventure Time. In 2013, the pilot for Over the Garden Wall came out and was called Tome of the Unknown: Harvest Melody. It was an interesting situation for Pat, since Cartoon Network previously asked him if it was possible to adapt his idea into a feature-length film. Ultimately, this was turned down. There was also the idea of making Tome of the Unknown into a full television series with upwards of 3 seasons. Eventually, Cartoon Network made the suggestion of turning Tome of the Unknown into a miniseries, to which Pat thought was perfect. Initially, it was going to be 18 episodes long, but was cut down to 10. And each one would run for about 12 minutes each. And lastly, they changed the name of the series to Over the Garden Wall. Let's break things down and talk about the different elements of the series. But before we do, I think it only makes sense to give y'all a quick synopsis. For the record, I'm gonna avoid spoilers, since, well, the point of this video is to convince y'all to watch the show for yourselves. The story is about 2 brothers who are lost in this mysterious world. Throughout their journey, they find themselves in different adventures, but their main goal is to find their way back home.
Like, this is a weird project to do, 10 episodes of a miniseries about kids being lost and like this old-time music, and it's a super weird thing.
The story for the series relies heavily on its setting. To me, that's one of the greatest traits about the show. We find ourselves in a world of mystery that keeps the viewer guessing. We don't know where the characters are, or more importantly, when they are. Instead, we are just thrown into the world feet first and are just as lost as the characters. The first episode begins with Greg and Wirt already on a journey. We don't know how they got there, but you can tell that something happened and has led them to this point. But the story doesn't dwell on that. Instead, we just press forward and watch these characters try to find their way back home as they explore this mysterious land. The world itself is one of fantasy, but not in the sense of elves and wizards. It has more of a haunted folklore feel to it, with monsters and ghosts. One that can be quite unsettling at times, with its imagery and characters.
There's something very charming about the world that they're in. And kind of scary. There's episodes that are sort of really dark.
Has anyone come here today?
Nay, Auntie, not a soul.
Then no one shall be devoured alive tonight.
Speaking of characters, let's talk about the 2 main ones, Greg and Wirt. As I said before, these brothers are lost in the great unknown and are trying to find their way back home. Wirt is the older brother and comes across as serious and practical. This works great in combination with his younger brother Greg. Unlike Wirt, Greg's optimistic, energetic, and has a big imagination. Their chemistry is wonderful and leads to some hilarious moments in the show.
Who are you? We're burglars!
yours.
No, we're not. We just needed to get out of the rain, and we thought this place was abandoned, so...
So we came here to burgle your turts.
No, it's not true.
It is true. Oh, okay, I give up.
Other characters include Beatrice the Blue Jay, the Woodsman, the Beast, and many, many others. The show also enjoys a wonderful cast of voice actors who are perfect for their roles. Elijah Wood is the voice of Wirt, and Colin Dean for Greg. There are also some veteran actors who voice in the show, such as John Cleese, Tim Curry, and Christopher Lloyd. Again, I don't want to spoil things for you all, but the characters fit so well with the setting and story of the show. They range from strange and weird to chilling and frightening. You don't know if they're your friend or enemy, and that kind of uncertainty holds my attention. There's also some genuine character development throughout the series, and how Wirt and Greg grow from their adventures.
The characters are very well crafted and well defined, and there are real relationships. You know, there's a real relationship between Greg and Wirt.
Hey, Wirt.
What?
So what's the plan? Because you're not saying any details, so it's hard for me
Greg, I do have a plan. And if you don't trust me, then you don't have to follow me, okay? You can do anything you want.
Anything? That's a lot of power.
I've already mentioned the setting and creation of the show, but I want to double back on this point. There's a lot more to it. The world the show takes place in is one of mystery. That you're in a deep, dark forest that gives you an eerie feeling. That things aren't immediately dangerous, but they don't feel quite right either. A big part of this atmosphere is due to the art direction of the show, and the person responsible for that is Nick Cross. He was the art director of the series, and was cool with answering some questions for this video. I asked him what it was like working on a miniseries compared to a long-running show, to which he said, and I quote, "Working on a miniseries was great art-wise, because we could go a bit more elaborate with the design since it was only 10 episodes, instead of an ongoing series. We pretty much stayed on schedule, but the last couple episodes were a scramble, so if it had been a full series, we would have been in big trouble." He also said, quote, that the art direction was basically inspired by my desire to push the limits of what is normally done in TV animation. I think what Pat was striving to achieve with the story of Over the Garden Wall inspired me to go the extra mile to make the series look as beautiful as possible. I also asked Nick about time periods that served as inspiration for the series, and he said that the show takes place mainly in an era inspired by 18th century America, but that they also delve into late 19th and early 20th century for certain episodes like Schoolhouse Follies. Lastly, I asked him about movies and shows that served as inspiration, to which he said, quote, "There's too many movies and shows to mention that inspired the look of the show. Movie influences were as varied as Pumpkinhead and The Wizard of Oz. We also watched a lot of Meatloaf videos for reference, a lot of silent films like Faust and Fritz Lang's Siegfried as well." Pat himself also mentioned some of the inspirations behind the show.
There's a lot of like old cartoon influence. There's a lot of modern cartoon influence too. I think it feels like. And so the world itself is kind of this sort of old-fashioned-y kind of thing, and then the characters that are entering into it have a more contemporary conversational feel.
Another wonderful element about Over the Garden Wall is the music.
Here, Miss Langtree, play something like this.
Oh, like this?
Good enough.
The composers behind the series were Josh and Justin from the Blasting Company. They came up with the lyrics and music for the series and did a fantastic job of combining the old with the new. Pat even said during an interview that episode 10 of the series did not make any sense until the music was added in.
You know, the songs that we're writing for the series are sort of like reminiscent of old songs, but they're not actual old songs. In the first episode, if we end there lyrically and then go to whistling over top of their narration, oh no, that wouldn't work because it's supposed to be the frog that's whistling.
How the gentle wind beckons through the leaves as autumn colors fall. Dancing in a swirl of golden memories, the loveliest lies of all.
My personal favorite moments of the show fall into spoilers, so I can't really say what they are. But let's just say that there are some great payoffs and excellent story arcs. Episode 9 was also quite the trip and caught me completely off guard. Also, the show itself is absolutely hilarious. There are jokes that still get a laugh out of me, even though I've seen the show 1,000 times.
And we're the hippopotamus, giraffe, and monkey. And we are committee number 3.
Okay, are there more? Well, that's enough.
Besides the seasonal feel and setting of the series, I think my absolute favorite thing about Over the Garden Wall is that it's a 10-part miniseries, and that's it. No sequels, no spin-offs, no reboots, just an excellent story with a satisfying conclusion. And trust me, that's all you need. Over the Garden Wall crushes every category for me. Its story, its setting, its animation, its voice acting, its music. You can see how much love and hard work Pat and his team put into the series to truly make something unique that would stand out to audiences everywhere. And the icing on the cake? Over the Garden Wall won an Emmy back in 2015 for Outstanding Animated Program.
You can do anything if you set your mind to it. That's what the old people say.
In my eyes, Over the Garden Wall is one of the greatest things to come from Cartoon Network. Because it was a miniseries, it was able to keep its focus and tell a concise story, one with a mysterious beginning and a satisfying conclusion. It's also a show that can be watched over and over again, especially during the fall. Actually, it's become somewhat of a tradition for me, and I highly recommend that you do the same. So if you haven't seen Over the Garden Wall, I implore you to check it out. It is absolutely worth your time, and you'll be happy that you did.
I never dreamed that there'd come a day when I'd find myself far from your arms. Now that I am, I can hardly stand. Just a sweet sunny piece of you.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, give it a like, and sub for more future videos. Also, a shout out to all of my supporters on Patreon. If you want to support my content, go hit up the link in the description. Alright, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.